It was the silence that most terrified us. The silence at night, the silence at dawn, the silence of day. We lay down pained at night, forbidden to cry out our pain to each other. So, silently, each second of the night passed. Silently for 4 years. Steinberg screamed out once, "You Nazi scum! We'll pay you back someday. Your Reich will last a few years. We've been around millennium. We'll see who survives who." Steinberg screamed this out in the silence of night. He was executed in the silence of dawn. We learned the lesson quickly. Every execution from that day on we viewed in silence. Cold, black, steel, silence. Cold, ebony, dawn, silence. Sister Ann prayed once, prayed out loud, prayed, "Dear, sweet, sweet Jesus, forgive them for what they've done. They don't know what they're doing to you." Prayed it again and again while a group of old Hasidim, like a flock of battered sheep, were thrown in with their wool locks in frozen dead of winter, pushed by the dreaded overseers headlong into the concrete ovens. The commandant had the ovens open mid-burn, and Sister Ann was told to view the Jewish sheep, now charred and black, before being thrown in with them. She was executed in the silence of day. We learned the lesson quickly. Every murder we witnessed from that day on, we prayed, those of us who still prayed, in silence. Cold, ebony, dazed silence. The Pole was silent once, but only once. Commandant screamed, "Give me an answer, swine! Give me an answer or you'll die!" The Pole remained silent, stared, eagle-eyed, determined and strong. Commandant screamed into the Pole's mouth, "Talk! Who did it?" Ba-da-da-da-da-da! GI Commando's carbine plug found the commandant's head. Silence cracked all over, cracked by bullets of life, cracked by guns of love, cracked by voices gruff with fatigue, GI voices of Pennsylvania, Georgia, California, Montana. Nervously viewing our gaunt bodies and dead eyes, they tried to crack the silence with their foreign talk. "Freund, Amerikanischer, see? Freund. How's about a candy bar, buddy? Hershey's chocolate. Real good stuff. Here, have one, man. Who here needs a plug of tobacco? What y'all doing standing around quiet for? Y'all are free, see? You're free." Then these strange tongues of liberation, of life, of love, asked us to state the abuses of our tormentors for the record. But all we did was stare back in silence. The silence of Steinberg, the silence of Sister Ann, the silence of the Pole, the silence of the Commandant, the silence of 5 years under the Commandant's rule, who, dead and bleeding before us, even now made sure the nightmare continued. 7 years later, in a synagogue in Philadelphia, I took an American wife because she knew nothing of the silence. Even today, her incessant American chatter is like life itself to me, and silence, like loneliness and pain, lies buried with the Commandant. But I know how to live and how to speak with a voice bold and ecstatic of life and love. This moment of present, this moment of future, to my children. My voice shouts to them to honor Steinberg, Sister Ann, the Pole, and the American GI. It has been resurrected from our crucifixion and from the chosen voices of millennium past. Future dust. I'll never look like that, I said to myself when we were offloaded from the Lackland Air Force Base officer training school bus and heard the upperclassmen bark orders at the arriving class and saw the triple rings under their eyes. 6 weeks later, I looked like that as I stood at the attention outside my room on Saturday morning inspection. As one upperclassman stood outside my room looking at every detail of my appearance for deviation. Details will save your life, repeated by my teacher so often it is forever burned into my mind. And another ran over every detail in my room, from the folds in the mattress to the spacing between my socks. I broke after they left to scan my demerits book, aware that so much depended on my finally bringing those demerits down. My graduation, the cohesion of my flight, honor, the future of the United States of America. And there it sat like a turd. The inspector left behind from the white-gloved hand, future dust. When the inspector returned for questioning, I fired it right at him. What's future dust, sir? I'd have had a perfect inspection but for that demerit. Come over here, son, he said in that thick southern drawl. He opened the blinds to let in the sun and pointed at the air. What's that? He said, a thin grin opening on his face, all the muscles in his future fighter pilot's body, preparing to press the red button on the joystick. Dust, sir, I stated. Wrong, Officer Candidate Curley. That's future dust. In a few minutes it will land on your desk and you failed to prevent it. Therefore, you, sir, are guilty. Guilty of letting down your flight. Guilty of failing to prevent future dust. 3 demerits. Goodbye. As our teachers told us so many times, they were preparing us for war. Waging war has rules and surprises repeated often enough become the rules of war. Like future dust, or the future dust of a company that fails to plan for the next bear market, or the future dust of a family death, or the future dust of the lack of preparation for the next war and the deaths that will follow, or the dust of skyscrapers brought down by fanatical Islamic terrorists, or the future dust we will find clogging the oxygen filters of our interplanetary spaceships. So many years later, I now know they were right. We all must be eternally vigilant to prevent future dust from landing if we are to have any chance at all of a life in the space dust of the future. Screaming like a banshee. My wife screams like a banshee to cover wailing with neutral sound when my toddler Eamon fights and refuses to take a nap. I hear Grandmom Curley scream like a banshee when the telegram arrived from the War Department in 1945 to tell her the oldest, Frank, the one who was supposed to be the Jesuit, instead had been killed in action when the Japanese Akak turned his B-24 into a fireball on his 39th mission over Hahajima in an ocean grave in the South Pacific. Grandmom Curley screamed like a banshee for weeks until they hooked her up and shot electricity through her brain to cover wailing with neutral sound. She never screamed like a banshee again. Instead, she wailed so deep down for 20 years because the hole in her heart was so vast. Laughter was no longer a planet in her galaxy, and the only way people would describe her was she was never the same after Frank died in the Pacific. Nice.